Hello and welcome to episode 45 of the GuildMag podcast with a little bit of Aaron's mumbling in the introduction there. It wouldn't be the podcast without something going wrong.
Alright, here's what happened. Before I thought you had started when you were humming the music. I thought you didn't have the music on hand, so I thought you were doing a goof and humming the music for the intro. And so I thought we had started, which is what happened there.
Wow.
I thought you were doing a goof.
Surely his mic is muted and he's not just broadcasting his humming out to the world.
No, I like to hum the intro music for everyone, apart from our viewers, of course.
Right.
So yeah, another week, another GuildMag podcast episode. As a reminder, if you are living in the USA and you are on Pacific time, we are now at 1 p.m. Pacific instead of the usual 12. The UK goes forward an hour in 2 weeks. Somebody help me out here.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 27th.
Okay.
So we will be on at 9 p.m. UK time. Wait, am I doing this the right way? 9 p.m.
Yes,
UK time, still 8 p.m. UTC. So bear with us. It can get a bit confusing. So this week, Salvation Pass, finally, after we've been talking about it for the last couple of weeks, is finally arrived.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be talking about that this week.
Raise your hand if you played it.
Raise your hand if you watched it. Raise your hand if you watched it.
There you go.
Yup.
So yeah, a lot to cover there. Some big kind of story, lore-y things developing. It seems like. But as always, we are going to do the gem store news first. So, in the gem store this week, for 400 gems, you can get yourself a classical glider. What actually is it? Like, what actually is
Go on.
the classical glider?
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Like,
All right, so it's basically the basic glider
that's what. Yeah.
colored red.
That's what I thought. Like, I knew it was like the basic shape, but I was like, surely there's something different about it. And
It's
literally-
red.
Well, there we go. There you go.
It's
So
it's not the most fantastic piece of attire.
Your mic just went cuckoo
Is,
crazy
yeah.
again, Aaron. It's not wings. So for everyone who's been complaining that all we keep getting is wings gliders.
By everyone, you mean me, of course.
And Aaron.
How is it now?
That's
There we
fine.
go. Now you're back.
Alright.
So I guess if you fancy a red classical standard glider skin for 400 gems, you can now get that. Also in the gem store, 10 new and exclusive hair colours have been added to the total makeover kits and the self-style hair kits. According to Sandra, brunette and blonde palettes.
Yes.
Any nice ones?
Not really.
Okay.
I wasn't impressed.
I-
I was just kind of like, oh, okay. There's like a platinum blonde, and there's like mahogany. There's another one. I was like, okay.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
nothing really to write home about these ones. I
mean-
didn't find.
They're normal hair colors. I mean, they sort of add to whatever they're already doing with the blonde and brunette palettes.
Well, there you go. If you fancy a change of hair colour, grab yourself
There
a
you go.
self-style hair kit. The March sales are continuing. I know this week there was the copper-fed Salvageomatic.
So dramatic.
I don't know what's available for sale right now, to be
Today?
honest.
Go. Keep talking.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
March is sale every day, isn't it?
It is. It's a sale
Yes.
every single day.
See, I don't buy things on the gem store very much, so I don't really check, you know.
No, I'm kind of the same.
I don't buy a lot of gem store.
I wait for people to like freak out because there's something really good on there, and then I'll be like, oh, okay.
Or I wait for people to freak out because they've done something real bad on there.
Speaking of which, then, so 2 new sets of weapon skins have come out with Salvation Pass. Let's talk about the one that that Aaron particularly, I guess, doesn't like.
Well, I like some of them.
So the raid obtainable
What a cop out.
White Mantle skins. Which ones do you like? Let's do the short list.
I like the staff. real cool, and I like the shield. That one's pretty neat, and I like the torch. It's pretty cool. The rest of them are
Was this out of
pretty not good.
this out of the Dominator or the White Mantle?
No, White Mantle.
The white mantle.
Okay. I liked the bows on the White Mantle.
They're okay. I mean, I really like
I
the
like-
staff.
Stuff's nice,
I
too.
hate the Slothosaur 2 weapon skins, the hammer and the focus. is it?
Focus.
Yeah.
The focus is actually kind of cool. The hammer's a bit weird.
The hammer's
The focus-
just
The mushroom.
awful.
Just a big
Yeah.
mushroom.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like a mushroom. It looks like an organ that got ripped out of a living being.
That's,
Well,
okay.
there you go.
Yeah.
That's just morbid. God.
Yeah, it looks like a gallbladder or something.
I was
Wow.
thinking something else, but we'll leave
Now
it there.
some medical professional in chat's gonna be like, gallbladders don't look like that at all.
So we also had the Dominator weapon skins, which are now available
These are
from
nice.
Black Lion Weapon Specialists for 1 ticket each. I actually like these. This is an entire
like
set
these
of
a lot.
weapons that I actually like for once.
I agree.
I like most of them. I'd say this is a higher percentage of likes for me than most Black Lion weapon sets.
I
I
think
like
I like that they're very metallic and have that kind of like iridescent sheen to them. I was checking them out on one of my characters, and the shield just kept changing color, which I thought was cool.
They don't strike me as metallic as much as like rocky. They
Here,
seem like they're made. They seem like they're made of rock to me.
I don't know. I like their iridescence. My shiny tick box was ticked.
You know what?
I picked up the staff.
I really
So did
like
I.
the greatsword on it. Like, I think this is the first time in quite a while I found a new greatsword skin that I quite like.
Yeah.
See, the great sword's one of them I don't like.
What's wrong
It's
with the
got that like
greatsword, Aaron?
scimitar
Yeah.
type.
You see, this
It's
is
a
how you
little-
do a proper scimitar thing, not like the what was the other ones I was bashing on last week?
Soaring.
soaring.
Was it the soaring?
Yeah, that's not how you do it. This is a good example of
Yeah.
it's smooth and sleek, and it's not. I like it. What don't you like about it?
But the staff, though.
I don't really like the shape of it. I think the spikiness doesn't really go with the whole curve, and the handle is kind of, there's not much guard to it. I like a beefy guard on a greatsword. You know
You
what I'm
want it
saying?
to look practical? Is that what you're
Yes.
trying to say?
Yes,
I
I do.
I mean,
I don't like it when it's just a
Fashion
hot dog
sense.
on a. I don't like it when it's a hot dog on a stick. It doesn't make me
Dude,
happy.
don't knock hot dog on a stick. They're tasty.
That's not what I want out of a greatsword.
I quite like the sword as well. I think that's quite
Mhm.
sleek, and it's just generally
I like-
quite a nice.
I
set.
like them all. Yeah. But
Uh,
the staff,
Yeah, Twigs and Guns says in chat the staff is badass for a melee staff.
it is.
Yeah,
totally
make really
is.
good melee stuff. There's not enough of those either, so it's a good thing.
I threw it on my Revenant. For sure. Are you going to sell yours or did you equip it?
I'm gonna sell it. I picked the staff because obviously it's the best one out of the set, right? So it'll probably sell for the most when they go up in ticket price.
Hopefully. Yeah.
So that's Skims and Gemstore news. Game news, obviously, big Salvation Pass patch notes are here. Basically just brought the new Raid Wing with it. There was a couple of quality of life changes to Spirit Veil as well. So Gorseval should, in theory, now properly aggro onto people. There was a couple of instances where it would he'd kind of turn on other people when he shouldn't do. So that's a nice change. They've also removed Adrenal Mushrooms, and instead your cooldowns will just reset after a wipe instead. So you don't need to have that mastery unlocked in order to properly reset all your cooldowns before going again. I think those are the major, like, just polish changes. There are a couple of other things, which mostly like bug fixes and
Mhm.
not much else apart from Salvation Pass.
Yeah.
And the other big news, obviously, Colin left on 2 days ago,
Yeah.
Friday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's
Yep.
now gone. We put out a blog post and a video saying farewell to Colin. So go and check it out if you haven't. It's on the GuildMag.com website. And that's the news. So let's go into Salvation Pass.
There we go. So what was your experience like there, Rowan?
I'm trying to hand this off to Aaron.
Uh-huh.
He's meant to say the next thing.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Go on then.
All right.
I'll
So
just carry on with my copying
so-
of a link.
but obviously to understand Salvation Pass, you need a little bit of backstory, right? What they've been doing in the game, pretty much since launch, actually, with the bandits, is they've been linking them steadily, just little tiny hints here and there, steadily to the White Mantle, which were a group of, it was basically a cult in Guild Wars 1 that ruled over Kryda when the player character...
Microphone. His USB port's bent, and I don't know how he's managed that, but
Right, can you hear me?
yeah.
Yes.
All right, so the White Mantle were basically a cult that ruled over Kryda when the player character came into the story. And they worshipped these beings called the Mursat, which were a group of ancient, or race rather, of ancient, very, very, very powerful spellcasters that happened to be around during the last time of the last Elder Dragon uprising. And what the Mursat did to survive that uprising was they hid themselves with magic from the Elder Dragons. And the other races, you know, they survived through the seers creating the Bloodstones. And what the White Mantle were doing with the Mursat circa Guild Wars 1 prophecies was taking Crichton citizens and sacrificing them to the Mursat upon one of the Bloodstones, which then was able to siphon their energy to soul batteries, which were powering a gate that was keeping back the Titans from... Guys, this is insanely complicated now that I'm actually explaining it.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap!
Yeah.
I mean, you're basically
Yeah.
trying to explain the entirety of prophecies in like.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and basically, what the reason the Mursat were doing that was because of a prophecy made by the dragon Glint, who is of course revealed to be a minion of Kralkatorrik. Oh my god! And basically, she prophesied the downfall of the Mursat by the Titans, which were being kept out by this door being powered by the soul batteries. And so that's what the White Mantle were doing with the Mursat. And then we kind of wiped out the Mursat in Guild Wars 1, and we overthrew the White Mantle, and that was in a little brilliant piece of content called The War in Kryda, a really good piece of content. And basically there was one Mursat we left alive at the end of that we know of, and his name was Lazarus the Dyer. And there was actually a Eye of the North quest chain to do with this guy, and he basically had bits of his soul living, or bits of his life force living through other White Mantle people. And he was... Yeah, seriously, he literally had Horcruxes. It was really cool. And he was hunting down these White Mantle and killing them and taking his life force back. And we essentially had to thwart that, and we left Lazarus the Dyer very... by the way, Lazarus the Dyer, one of the founding members of the... Not founding members, but one of the head honchos of the Mursat. He was up there with Mira the Smug, I want to say. It might not have been Mira, but it was someone the Smug and Optimus Caliph. And those three were the leaders of the Mursat. The other two died, and we're left with Lazarus the Dyer as the last remaining Mursat. And basically, how this all ties into Salvation Pass is obviously we run into the bandits in Salvation Pass who are, forerunners of the White Mantle, and then we run into more hints at the White Mantle by the end of Salvation Pass, which finally leads us to a hint at the Mursat. And that's how that ties in.
Take a breath.
It seemed a lot less complicated in my head.
Yeah, so if you haven't played Guild Wars 1 at all, the original Guild Wars 1 wiki has a lot of really useful articles on the Mursat and White Mantle, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there as well, lore videos and whatnot. Something I totally forgot to research is... So we actually at GuildMag, when War in Kryta came out, did a special War in Kryta magazine issue, and I can't remember what's in it, but I'm pretty sure there's some useful stuff on the Mursat and White Mantle in it. So Sandra's about to furiously go and find out.
Yeah, I'm gonna find it.
And we'll get back to that one. So definitely go and check it out if you are raiding, even if you're not. It's gonna be. What's the word I'm looking for? Holy crap! Like integral to the story that we're experiencing.
The
at the
story,
moment.
yeah.
So definitely go and learn a little bit about it. So in Salvation Pass. So by the way, kind of spoiler alert for everything past this point for Salvation Pass. If you haven't killed the final boss in it yet, or if you haven't entered it yet, we are going to be talking about the story that unfolds during the entirety of the wing, and like little cutscenes that happen after it and stuff. So yeah.
Don't hate on us. You can be mad at Guild Chat because they brought it up first. So it's
Exactly.
in our weekly news that we've got to cover.
Yeah, if they're allowed, then it's free game, right?
Yeah.
It's open
Now-
season.
Go ahead.
Oh
I
no,
was
go
gonna-
ahead.
I was
I was
going to say that one of the things that Bobby, they opened the Guild Chat up with talking about Sol D'Alessio and the founding of the White Mantle. And you were actually running around in Harathi where his tomb is supposed to be, and you couldn't find it.
Well, because I don't know if because there is an actual tomb to him. I think obviously he's not in it because we don't know what happened to him. But I couldn't find the actual tomb, and I couldn't remember if there was an actual tomb or if there's just that Dwayne statue, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there's supposed to be a statue that you're supposed to kneel in front of, and that sets off like an event chain.
Mhm.
And then at the end of it, you go and discover that the tomb is empty.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I did the event chain on the stream, but we talked to the statue. It was a good time.
It was a good time. I don't know. There's this whole idea with the White Mantle. I think is really cool that they're bringing it back in. I mean, they obviously threw in the big old hints at it. The beginning of Living World Season 2. But if you've been playing human characters since launch, or you started off and you started doing that personal story, the White Mantle show up in those personal story steps in various forms. Usually you're finding them through bandits. Their banner, you can find it in Queensdale in the bandit caves. So how surprised are we?
Well, I mean, people have been suspecting those bandits and White Mantle connections ever since the game's launch. And as this raid's unfolded, and even Season 2 when we went to Fort Vandal, it's been a pretty... It was one of those, like, Silvaria minions of Mordramoth kind of theories that everyone just kind of accepted and then was actually revealed to be what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised, to be honest. I am glad though that it is what's actually happening, that they're bringing Guild Wars 1 stories and lore into Guild Wars 2.
Yeah.
And definitely
I would have
go on.
Oh, I would have been surprised if this had been, if like, let's say raids came out before Season 2 was over a thing, right? Then I would have been surprised. But Season 2 was when they really started like dropping serious hints that like, hey guys, we're totally going to do the White Mantle later. So now it's not surprising. But if they'd done it before that, it would have been a pretty cool twist. But now it's kind of like, yeah, we knew. We knew this was coming. It's cool. It's still cool. It's just, it's not surprising. It's not surprising anyone.
Yeah.
So to take people through what happens in Salvation Pass, a general big overview of it. So the White Mantle becomes much more prominent as you kind of progress through. So we saw in Spirit Vale that we're fighting these bandits and all these spirits and things. We're not quite sure what's going on. And you begin in Salvation Pass after you get past Slothersaw, which is just barely even relevant. You enter this kind of prison camp and you're fighting more bandits and trying to free packed soldiers, defend them while you're fighting off these champion bandits. And you continue to progress through until you essentially come across this temple, this stone like domed temple-y thing, where you find a guy called Matthias Gabriel, and you discover that he is essentially the leader of all these bandits and a White Mantle Inquisitor.
Dum, dum, dum.
And there is a giant kind of bloodstone shard right in the middle of this temple floating above them. And you fight him, and kind of halfway through he transforms into this big bloodstone abomination kind of thing, with like crystals protruding out of him. If you've ever played Dragon Age Inquisition, he's basically a Red Templar. And yeah, you kill him and you speak to, I cannot remember the name of the packed like squad leader that you rescue.
Squad leader Bennett.
That's the one. you speak to him, and there's a little cutscene that kind of explains the origins of the White Mantle for anyone who, and the Masot. Just it's like a 1 minute cutscene or something that just really
Pretty
quickly.
sweet cutscene.
It is quite
It's one of
cool
those
looking cutscene.
concept art cutscenes. It's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
live action.
It is quite cool. And there's foreshadowing by Bennett that he doesn't want to think about it, but he speculates what if Lazarus the Dyer didn't die. And he's like, oh, I don't even want to think about that right now. And he also goes on to mention hints at things like the spirits that we fought in Spirit Vale are the spirits of those who've been sacrificed to by the White Mantle to the Bloodstone, which is what they've been doing. And when we killed Mordramoth, all that energy kind of just knocked them out of the Bloodstone, for lack of a better term, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's where we're up to so far. So we haven't seen any Masot yet. We've only seen one like official White Mantle Inquisitor dude. And so the third raid wing will presumably take us further and hopefully see some Masot maybe. And this is what people have been speculating: is the final boss going to be Lazarus himself? I think it's quite interesting that on Guild Chat they seem to mention Saul D'Alessio a fair amount. So I'm wondering if we'll maybe get to like fight
A combo,
like
both of them.
ghostly version, or like some sort of imbued magic version of him that he never actually died. He's just like this abomination thing, or whatever.
Well, I mean, here's the thing about Saul D'Alessio. I don't know that we would be fighting him. I think it would be more likely we'd have him as an ally, because the reason the Mersat kind of took him to wherever they took him, they essentially took him captive, was because he ended up not agreeing with their way of doing things by the end, after they saved Kryda from the Char, and they murdered all those villagers that were that they just saved because they saw the Mersat. Saul D'Alessio was like, "Yo, dog, not cool. I don't know if I'm down with that." And they were like, "Well, okay then." And they just kind of took him somewhere, nobody really knows where. So I think if he comes back in some sort of spirit form, they'll have brainwashed him completely and made him into something else, and we'll probably fight him. Or B, he could be an ally of some sort. I would prefer B. I think that would be more fun to have him as an ally than as an enemy, but it could go either way.
Yeah, I agree. I was totally going to say something off that, and it's completely gone. What was I going to say?
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's infuriating, isn't it?
It really is.
It's the worst.
I do
This
this
was
It was a good one too, wasn't it?
Saul
it was a
D'Alessio.
really good one. It was like a really good point. And I was like, oh, I've got to say this.
Saul
I don't know,
D'Alessio.
we'll come back to it.
Lazarus. Okay.
We'll come back to it.
All right.
So, as since this is quite a meaty, lore story, I'm trying to think of another word to rhyme with that, but I can't. Thing. There has been some kind of upset about this amount of stuff being in the raid itself, and this is like carrying on a conversation that people have been having going back months now. And there was, I think the kind of TLDR of the whole argument is that people aren't upset that the lore and like story stuff is in the game. It's more just that raids are inaccessible to a lot of players, and there are people giving anecdotes of they just don't have time to dedicate like 3 hours a night to raiding to be able to clear this content. They were saying on Guild Chat that there are ways to
Find the information.
But
so
it's a bit wishy-washy, I feel.
Yeah. So I felt like Bobby was trying to basically tell people to just chill out, that don't start jumping the gun because the third wing isn't out yet and everything will become apparent once the third ring is in, and you'll see where they've been going. So they're basically asking the players to just kind of calm down and just wait and trust them that they're going to be bringing in ways to tell the story so that players will have access to it. They didn't really say how in game, other than they kept repeating, go in with a friend who's cleared it, which is fine.
What if you don't have any friends that have cleared?
But
This
what
is
if
a
you
big
don't
thing
have
for me,
any? Yeah,
like-
what if you don't know anyone who's? So you're going to start looking for group tool, trying to like find people. I want to go and explore the lore.
And it's-
Sell the.
Yeah, I feel like
X amount. It just.
if I was, I'm cutting you off before I forget my point. I'm
That's
so sorry.
fine.
Like, if I was a raider, I'm not a raider, sorry, and someone who like
A
just-
filthy casual, you mean?
If I was a filth casual, no, I don't. If I was someone who didn't have the amount of time to dedicate to raids to learn the fights, and because I'm pretty sure that's the crux of the argument, like people aren't just physically unable to learn the fights. It's just most people don't have the time to do it. That's a whole other thing. I wouldn't want to just go into a raid that's been cleared and like pick up the scraps of what's left behind.
That's
I
it.
want
I mean,
to actually go and kill
experience it for
Matthias.
yourself.
And I
Yeah.
want to see him in his abomination form, and then I want him to be like, "Rawr!" And then I want to be like progressing the story myself.
Myself.
I don't want to be tagging along to somebody else's story.
Yeah, I mean, I
Alright.
felt like they also brought in the point. Well, you can go you can go to the wiki if you want the lore. You can go out into the internet. There's people who have put out videos, and there's going to be more coming. And I'm like, why do we have to go out of game to satisfy our own interest in the progress of the story, being able to progress it ourselves? Because I'm super stoked that they brought this in, and that we're getting to find out what's happening with the White Mantle and possibly Lazarus the Dire. But like you were saying, I want to do it. I want to do it myself.
And this has been kind of a recurring problem for Guild Wars 2, is that a lot of lore is outside the game. So if you think back to when we were getting all those short stories, especially with like Scarlet and even leading up to Heartthorns, like the Exalted and stuff. Although to be fair to them, a lot of stuff on the Exalted is actually in game, and that was more just like a, I guess a primer. But
Yeah.
they have had this issue of finding ways to get stuff physically into the game rather than requiring people to go outside the game, which is in complete contrast to the original.
Right, where everything was just self-contained in the game.
Yeah, everything was in game.
Yeah.
It was up to you to go and find it. And so, I think I forgot what point I was making again.
Yeah. TK
right.
brings up a good point, saying, I would rather they change some of the more popular world events to tie in changes in lore. And I think that's a good point. I mean,
As long
we've
as
talked-
it's not shoehorned. Like,
Yeah,
as long as it makes
you know,
sense.
yeah.
Like, you can't
yeah.
really tie Tequaddle to the Mersat. I mean, I'm sure you
Right.
could, but it would be contrived as hell, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
And Twigs and Guns makes the point that we've been listening to a dev say, go and watch people playing the game instead of play the game, as a
Yeah.
solution to being able to do this content.
Yeah.
And that's the problem I see with because the main argument against story mode raids, right? Because this is where I'm getting at. I would like story mode raiding to be a thing. And the main argument against this is that it would take too much development resources off of other projects to achieve, and that you can already get in the raid instance and experience it without doing the raid, so what's the point? But the counters to that are that the fact that you can go into an already completed instance and experience the lore is a janky workaround at best. It's not it's not the only way you want. Like, it's not a viable solution to give to someone. Because like you guys said, not everybody knows somebody who raids. And furthermore, I think, yes, they would have to dedicate resources to developing a downscaled story mode raid, right? The reason why I think they should do that is because I think in the long run, it's going to be worth it. Your player base is going to be happier. There's a huge portion of the player base that doesn't raid, and if you do these story mode raids, if you take the time and put the resources forth to do them, I think it's going to pay off in a happy player base, and it's going to keep people playing longer. So I think even though it would take resources to do, it will be rewarding in the end if they just put in a story mode for the raids, because that's a lasting solution.
And we've
is what
mentioned
that
this
is.
before, in that they can then stop making the difficulty of the other raids just mediocre and actually bump them up to people like myself who want genuinely hard raids. And then you've got the easier version for people to go and do who struggle with the others. Because I mean, I was talking to one of Jason, one of our writers, and he's part of our static, and we were talking for about 3 hours on Friday after our raid about how this kind of middle ground isn't particularly satisfying for either party. And we talked about this loads on the podcast before, so we won't go into too much detail there. I think Netco made an important point in chat. So they said it's a good story, but it's still just a side story for Guild Wars 2. And I think the true reason that people are upset is that there's no other story beside raids at the moment. Yeah. So it's like anyone who's not raiding, you've got nothing really to do. There's no other stories for you to go and experience and explore.
Yeah, and the fact that we're waiting, Living World Season 3 is going to be picking up in quarter 3. So it's, you know, for PvE players, there's really, it's raids. That's the only content that's in, that's new. Because obviously the Heart of Thorns maps, they're there and people are playing them. But if you wanted to experience something else, it's raids and raids and raids again. So
so we've got this point in the show notes that are we classing this as like big story, or is it just a side story that's got a lot of tie-ins to Guild Wars 1 and it's sounding like it's going to be a good story in itself, but is it going to be like world impacting? What do you think? I mean,
the thing is, it could go either way. The thing that's worrying is that yes, it could be world impacting. You know, the Mersat are a huge part of Guild Wars 1 lore. They're a huge part of the overall lore of the game. It's going to be insane if they it's going to be insane in either outcome. It's going to be insane if they make this huge story implication come in the form of a raid story, because like I said, no one's going to be able to experience it. Now, they said they're coming up with you know, possible solutions for that, and that could mean they will have story mode raiding rolled out with the third wing, but that's, you know, there's no sort of information on that at all, so that's not something we can count on. And conversely, this could be a completely unnecessary side story, in which case they've just written off one of the most important things to the lore as a non-pertinent side thing. Which, so either way, it's not going to be good for the game unless they invent some sort of story mode raid instances. So guys, I've been hammering this point home all week on Twitter. I'm so invested in story mode raiding. But really that's the solution I see. Yes, it'll take time to do and it'll take resources to do, but I think it's such a good lasting solution. I don't see why not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby's point on Guild Chat was that they're going to be using raids as one way that they'll be using raids is to tie up Guild Wars 1 loose ends. And they'll be looking to bring in these loose ends from Guild Wars 1 wherever it makes sense, which, again, makes sense. But I think to say that the White Mantle is a side story, like you're saying, just you can't relegate the White Mantle as being just a side story when they are such a huge part of the lore from the first game.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just it's
the
undermining
the prophecies.
Yeah, it's like you're undermining the previous, in a way, in previous story. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense. So to me, this feels like a big. To me, this feels like a big story in the history of the whole Guild Wars lore.
And there is a third. There is a third scenario here, in which case this isn't as much of a travesty, and that would be if the White Mantle and the Mersat were going to come into the story in a pertinent way in Living World going forward. It would still kind of suck to have them introduced through raiding, because that would pack less of a punch than having them introduced through the Living World. But if they do have them later on down the line, then yes, it won't be so bad to have this extra little side story about these people that are already pertinent in Living World, because that would entice people to go back and do the raid after the Mersat would come out in Living World, but there's no guarantee that they are. So right now it seems worrying. It could end up not being so worrying down the line, but right now it seems a little worrying.
So here's how I see it. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rowan. Because what they did with the Sylvari story, the Sylvari personal story, they basically set you up, tying you in from Guild Wars 1 lore with the whole idea of Ventari and Ronin. They brought you through the personal story, laid in little seeds of the Shadow of the Dragon, of Malik, and this other tree that he came from, and they basically gave you some underpinning for Heart of Thorn's story. And the White Mantle story, I kind of see it as a parallel, because you're tying in through the human personal story that the bandits are kind of leftover vestiges of the White Mantle. They're trying to come back into power. They brought this in further through Living Worlds Season 2 and saying, hey, they're still around. Here's some more hints. And you can go and explore in Brisbane Wildlands and go mess with their things. So I would like them to kind of continue this on, because it's interesting storytelling.
Yeah.
I just like the way that they bring in and tie things from previous storytelling into what we're getting now. And I like that they brought it into the raids, but I think we need to have another avenue in so that people can experience it for themselves by playing it themselves.
And go ahead, Rowan. You've been trying to make your point for like three rounds now. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, for me, I feel like this starts and ends with Forsaken Thicket, in all honesty. I've totally forgotten one of the points I was gonna make. But it's like, so I feel like for many people, Guild Wars 2 is their first introduction to the Guild Wars franchise. And I feel like there's this kind of oh my god, what's the word?
Investment?
No,
or not investment?
Disconnect. That's the word. There's like
disconnect
between what's happening in Guild Wars 2 and what's come before it in Guild Wars 1. And I think all this, like the White Mantle and the Masat and everything, of such a huge amount of kind of lore and backstory behind it, that I think this is just a nod to what's happened in Guild Wars 1, in that my gut instinct is going to tell me we're going to encounter Lazarus as the final boss. He's going to be the last surviving Masat, guaranteed. We deal with it, and that's White Mantle and
then you
Masat
move
just
on.
done with it. And that it's a side story. It's big in that it brings in lore, and it's about one way of dealing with the aftermath of Mordramoth, because this has been spurred on by that. But it's not integral to the overall story of Guild Wars 2, which is what I feel is, to me, makes the most sense for what they're trying to do with raids. Because I think if it was much more integral, I honestly think they would have seriously considered a story mode much more, or more ways to engage more people. Because I think they knew going into this that not everyone was going to do raids. And I think to me it just makes the most sense to not have to drag players through all the previous game's lore to catch them up to what may be happening, say, in Season 3, if we continue with, Masat, White Mantle, all that.
So remember when Echoes of the Past came out, Living World Season 2, and we got the big, Priori archives, and we can go in and dig around. I mean, that was like a big, that was a satisfying Living World chapter for Guild Wars 1 players. I've got several friends who play Guild Wars 2 who were bored to tears with that. They're like, I don't care about this stuff. Why? Who are these people? They're not invested in it. So the question that I ask is, Guild Wars 1 players, I think, are the ones who are probably being most vocal. It feels that way to me, that they're being most vocal about being unsatisfied with the way that the Guild Wars 1 lore is being brought in this instance, through the raids. Because one of the comments that stuck with me from Reddit was, I've been waiting 10 years to see the resolution of the story, and I can't play through it myself because I'm not in a raid group. I can't find a raid group, etc., etc., etc. But like you're saying, if your player base is mostly non-Guild Wars 1 players, how do you marry those two together?
Yeah, I mean,
it would be by essentially having this story be its own story, but also having the Mersat and the White Mantle be involved more heavily in the living world. Now, I don't think we're going to kill Lazarus the Dire. If we do kill Lazarus the Dire, he's not going to be the only Mersat left, because I think it's like storytelling suicide to completely eliminate a race that you've developed altogether from the world. So I don't think they'll kill off the Mersat.
I mean, do they even need the Massat at this point? Like, we've got so many other things going on in Guild Wars 2. Like, the Massat are a big thing of Guild Wars 1, but let's leave them there. Like, we've done all that.
And yet the White Mantle, the bandits and the White Mantle are still around.
I mean, what do we need and not need though, right? Like, no, we don't need the Mersat. We didn't really need the Exalted either. Like, what was that? But we've got them. And the Mersat, I mean, why keep them around? Because they're pretty freaking cool. Like, they're one of the coolest races they've ever come up. Their development team has ever come up with. It would be very much a shame to kill them off. I don't know. I don't think we'll be eliminating the Mersat. I think it would be a really bad idea for them not to bring them into the main narrative. They're so integral, and the mystery with the Seers, are there any Seers left or not? Where the Seers come up, the Mersat have to come up. So
yeah,
I really don't want them to kill off the Mersat. I think it would be a bad idea.
I mean, and they're so tied into Crichton politics in the open world right now, with them trying to still overthrow the monarchy. So they're after Jenna. They've been tied into. Weren't they tied in with Codicus's manor? The suspicions that Codicus is a White Mantle connection, or he's sponsoring them.
Because of his connections to the bandits, it's suspected that he's a White Mantle sympathizer.
So it's like they're there. So they're still part of the core game lore, and that's not going anywhere. So it just seems like they're trying to, I don't know. I would make them come back maybe elsewhere outside of the raids, because you're not going to get rid of the bandit problem by just killing off Lazarus the Dyer.
I hope that this raid isn't the only place we see the White Mantle and the Mersat. I feel like the White Mantle are a good avenue for an entire, like, you had Warren Kryda in Guild Wars 1, right? That was completely based on overthrowing the White Mantle. I think the White Mantle are a good avenue for something similar in Guild Wars 2. Maybe not an entire Living World season, but maybe a couple quests that are like, hey, the White Mantle have risen again and are a problem here.
Mike. We'll get him to fix it one of these days.
Yeah.
All right. Well, White Mantle would be good in the story going forward. That's all I mean. Let's not just keep them to the raid.
Well, I mean, here's an idea. I mean, they brought in other stories. We talked about this, I think, in the last podcast or one of the previous ones, that they brought in other stories that they could tell through the bonus mission pack in Guild Wars 1. Would they, could they, should they do something similar for Guild Wars 2? For players who want to experience those stories.
I've got no issue with that. I think it would be... I think they've certainly got the capability, especially with what they've been doing in Season 2, with the ability to replay instances, at will and stuff. It certainly seems extremely feasible. And to bring in some things from chat. So
yes.
TK says, kind of jokingly, I think, they need to use the time travel sci-fi story link a la malfunctioning Azura Gate to get players into a place where they can tie in Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2, and that could be a way to do it. So have some sort of I guess buyable content where you can get an idea of what's happened before somehow. I don't know.
Stabilize OMAD's machine.
I was gonna say, guys, you're literally talking about fractals right now.
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's what fractals are. So that would be nice. That would be a good way to bring that to a wider audience. But yeah, as someone who's not a raider and who has no active interest to raid, could I raid? Yeah, I could. My guild has a raid group. I simply don't want to. Like, the idea of banging my head against a boss for 3-4 hours a night for weeks on end and not beating it, I couldn't fathom a worse way to spend my time, honestly. So no, I don't want to raid at all. It sounds awful. So it's just kind of
I felt about Silver Waste, just banging my head up against meaningless content.
That's it.
Yeah, but guess what? I'm completing it every time. I go in and I beat it. I come away with things.
But the thing is that right there, it's like you're two different kind of players who are interested in different things. So the ability to have that, I mean, is one of the things that I think Guild Wars 2 has done well. They're able to meet the needs of players with different interests.
Yeah, and I think we spend a fair amount of time actually bashing on raids, but like overall they're not bad in Guild Wars 2. They're not. It's content that's being played by a lot of people. And a lot of
They're
people are
fine. They're
enjoying
just
it.
not my thing.
Right, and that's fine.
Indeed.
I just going into that, I feel like another reason the raids having this story was such a misstep is because I feel like they're kind of without a story mode raid. I feel like they're kind of using the story as part of the reward for raiders. It's like, yeah, and you get this exclusive story that's only in the raid,
Right.
and it's like I think people who like raiding, when the majority of people, right, not everybody, but the majority of people who want to raid, they want to beat the boss and they want to get the loot and stuff like that. I don't think that story reward should be a raid reward. I think the people who want rewards in raiding are all about the monetary value,
I mean,
and they're
yeah,
not so
like,
much. They're not like, yeah, let's raid so we can experience this story. I don't
Yeah.
think that's that's not the right place for story as reward.
I raid because I enjoy the difficulty and overcoming bosses like that, and I just enjoy like being forced to try and play my best in the game rather than just like being able to like spam a load of skills and stuff just dies, and it's like, that's fun.
Great.
I think that's that's I think that idea of that casual players are just about, spamming skills and stuff dies. They don't really care about getting better. I think that's a misconception about not as hardcore players. There we go. That needs to die. I mean, I'm just going to be blank about it. It's just, it doesn't do anyone, I think, any favors when we start kind of like trying to pigeonhole and label player types. Even for like the raiders, they're all only about the rewards or the loot or this or the. Not true for all of them. True, maybe for a majority. I'm not picking on you. I'm not trying to get into like my teacher moment here, but yeah.
I just don't think that raids are the right place to offer exclusive story material.
Give us a bonus mission pack. Job done.
So, moving on from the story then, and we're going to talk a little bit about the actual difficulty that came with Salvation Pass. Won't spend too long on this. So, 48 hours to beat the entire wing. Too easy?
I would say so.
Maybe a little. Yeah.
Absolutely
You only had,
too easy.
I mean, there was only like 2 bosses, right?
Yeah, so the first thing is there's only 2 actual bosses. The second encounter is just like 3 bandit champions and they defend the packed prisoners kind of. I mean, it took like people like an hour to do that. So that's like barely a raid.
It's not fantastic.
Encounter. It's like just another load of trash mobs with a little bit more difficulty. So 48 hours, and I was surprised that on Guild Chat they were acting like 48 hours was a good time for people to beat the entire wing. And I was sitting here like,
it took them 2 whole days.
I was like, are you crazy? Like that is a ridiculously short.
They're like, oh, some really good players went in and they cleared it in like 2 days. I'm like, that's not a good thing.
I would. So it sounds like they're designing it to be beaten in this kind of time frame, like within a couple of days. We've talked about this on previous episodes about my thoughts on how it should be, how it should take like weeks to be able to clear raid wings. And you can go, if you haven't listened to that argument, you can go back to previous episodes and listen to me rant on for quite a while. So I think just overall difficulty kind of confirmed what or at least I was suspecting in previous episodes, is it's just going to be and more of the same, too easy. People have cleared the whole thing within a couple of days. It's just the thing that got me is that they seemed okay with it. But we'll see on that one. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and I realised this as I was doing the show notes, about Slothosaur and the mechanics that it has, that when one person makes a mistake, you can wipe the party. And for anyone that's been watching this podcast for a long time, may or may not recall that before Heart of Thorns was released, when we'd learnt that raids were coming, we were talking about what should raids include, and I remember saying things like, you should have mechanics where if one person messes up, you wipe. And I've been struggling to answer the question of do I like this like incarnation or not in Sloth.
Okay.
And I genuinely don't know the answer. So I think like I'm leaning towards I don't like the way they're doing it because, so for anyone who doesn't know, there's a mechanic called volatile poison, and it puts a debuff on you, and you have, I think it's around 5 seconds. It's like 5 to 7. I'm not quite sure of the time. I probably should be, but it's around that time. And after that amount of time, you will set off like an AoE poison field around you, and it's relatively big, and it will continue to grow in size for a considerable length of time. And in the Slothosaur fight, the whole of the floor is covered in poison, and there's only a very narrow kind of path that you create as players to be able to travel through at any one time. So if a player puts volatile poison down in the middle of the group, everyone's standing in a poison field, you die because there's nowhere to move to escape it. And so that's a mechanic where if you mess up, you basically just wipe the party because you kill a couple of people, and by that point. But it's the issue I have that it's so easy to avoid and it's so easy to deal with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can't you just cleanse it off?
No, so you have to. The way to deal with it is you move right to the back of the path that you've created, so that I'm trying to think of a way to describe this for anyone who hasn't even seen the fight. So the room, total poison, and you eat mushrooms to create a clear path. And the path kind of disappears after a while. So you eat mushrooms and it catches up to you. You eat more and it catches up, and then you kind of just go around the room like that. And so what you want to do is your group will be at kind of the end of the path from where you're going, and you want to drop the poison at the end of the path where you've just been, so that it's not like you're not walking into it. You're like walking away from it as you go around the room. And there are other mechanics to deal with. You can, like, there's one thing that nobody even really does where you can, like, throw, like, a golden slubbling to someone and it'll make them immune to poison. So you could go and drop it, like, somewhere not on the path. But the generally accepted mechanic is you just drop it where you've been and you carry on. It's not difficult to deal with at all. And you get... if you have system messages on, you'll get a big red thing in your chat log, you'll get a debuff on your debuff bar, and you get a giant green skull above your head. So it's very, very difficult to miss, if I'm being blunt. But people still do, and this is why a lot of groups wipe, is because people just place poison fields down, and there's no way you can overcome it, realistically. And that's my issue, is that typically, if you have mechanics that wipe the party, you want it to be because it's a genuinely kind of, I suppose, difficult or engaging mechanic, if that makes sense. Like, volatile poison is not engaging. You get a debuff, you go somewhere, you drop it, you come back. It's not like other raids where, I mean, I can think of stuff off the top of my head, but it'd take far too long to explain what I'm talking about, so I won't bother.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that, you get all of these indicators, and people are still not realizing that they're there. So I think here's where you're getting the difference between players who are good at taking in visual information quickly, which is what I think a lot of raiders are good at, and then you're less, I don't know, skillful. I don't know if skillful is the right word, but you're less. There's players who will take those visual cues in at a slower clip. Yeah, that's. And sometimes they don't even notice it because they're just they might be focused on fighting and not really paying attention to the conditions or whatever that are on them. So their attention just needs to be kind of widened rather than narrowed.
I think so one of the arguments that some people put forward is that the giant green skull that's above your character is green on a big green poison field. Like, the whole floor is bright green, so it can be difficult to see. But my counter argument is it comes up on system messages in your chat log, which, by the way, it rarely does on any other MMO unless you're watching like a combat log or something. And you also have an actual debuff on your debuff bar, which you should be looking out for, and it plays a sound. I think the sound is a little bit bugged at the moment, but it still plays like a little boop sound, which is audible over. It's different enough to like everything else to you be able to detect that that's like a you've got a debuff to deal with mechanic sound.
Why not do like a more noticeable sound if they're going to do an aural, AURAL-Q?
It's hard to describe what it sounds like. It is noticeable though. It's genuinely noticeable over like the just dirge of combat.
Is it like the cats? Do the meow? Except when you had the Toxic Alliance and you'd be fighting them.
It's a bit more subtle than that, but it's still
Okay.
I don't really know how to describe it. I'd have to find a video or something, but it's another cue that when it works properly, it's you notice it, and yeah, I think it's just people in the mindset. Raiding is a mindset of you need to be aware of everything that's going on at once, and you need to be actively thinking about mechanics that are coming up, not just like dealing with what's happening right there and then, because you normally need to be preparing for stuff that's going to come, because by the time you realize what's happening, it's normally too late to actually rectify it. But it's just one of the things that, and the way that a lot of people overcome this in other raids is that in your party bar you can see everyone else's debuffs. So, and it's normally a raid leader's job to make raids so trivial that nobody else has to think about any of the mechanics. The raid leader does all the thinking and all the shot calling for you. So you would say like volatile poison on Sandra, go deal with it. So you don't actually have to think about it. Because in Guild Wars 2, you can't see anyone else's debuffs at a glance. You'd have to like, click on them or
you need to discern
whatever. Yeah, it's like impossible for me as a raid leader to say volatile poison on X, go and deal with it, and then if they miss it themselves, get time to wipe. So I'm in two minds about it. Like I said, I like mechanics that one player can mess up and you wipe the party, because it's just a level of difficulty and a level of like responsibility on people, and I like that in raids. But I don't yet know if I like how this is done.
I think going back to the idea of different play styles and why it feels like the majority of Guild Wars 2 players aren't raiding is because they're not either prepared to raid, they don't have time. So this could be why the difficulty of the raids is kind of at the same plateau right now.
Yeah,
where it's frustrating for you because you're ready for more, but it would be like for players who are not yet at that level, they would have to get better, so it would be good for them to kind of just learn and improve. I don't know.
And I think so. One of the issues is that in Slothosaur there's another mechanic which is very similar. The boss has no standard aggro. It will fix it. It's called fixation on one player, and it will like target them to aggro onto them. And this puts a giant purple thing above your head, a debuff on your debuff bar, a sound, a message in the chat log, and it pops up as text like physically for everyone. So it says Sandra is fixated by Slothosaur. So we can all see that, and that is impossible to miss. But they haven't done that for volatile poison. They have everything but the giant text pop up that everyone can see, and I think that's what a lot of people like. I'm fine with that. I'm totally like fine dealing with that and like as a mechanic, but I think people expect the game to spell out for them mechanics, and I know Jace was putting forward the argument that if they have it for fixation, they should have it for volatile poison as well. I don't believe that. I believe people are more than capable of dealing with it without it announcing to everyone who's got volatile poison on them.
Well, now, the way that they've designed the new player experience is very much handholdy. It sounds like an echo, what you're describing in the raid. It sounds like an echo of that. just this hand holding to kind of let you know, hey, you've got this going on. Pay
The
attention.
new Raider experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It very much
know?
feels like that. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not used to having this many cues for a mechanic to deal with. It's very much, yeah. I mean, the game literally tells you this Slothosaur is fixated on this person in giant text, along with absolutely everything else, which is fine. I mean, it's fine for people who don't raid, and for people who, you know, amidst trying to like pull off the perfect rotation and deal with everything else that's going on, will miss mechanics. It's fine for that, but it's totally a point I've forgotten. I was gonna make. I'm doing this so much lately.
You're not convinced that it's working correctly or should be in the game.
I'm not convinced that
This is how they go out to
mechanics that are so easy to deal with should wipe the party, and it should. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore.
Is it you want a harder mechanic to wipe the party? I mean, that's what it sounds like.
I think the point you're getting at is raids should be hard.
I've just figured it out.
Yeah.
So I'm getting at the point that I'm frustrated that I'm being wiped by something that is so mind-numbingly easy to deal with. That's my frustration. I wouldn't mind if I'm being wiped by something that is more difficult to deal with and actually requires you to actively think and deal with something. But the mechanic is literally run to the back of the path when you have a giant skull above your head that's difficult to miss.
Right.
If you're playing semi-competently, you should be able to see.
Yeah, and
Right.
like I've been I've spent the last week just being wiped for like 6 hours, mostly by volatile poison.
Yeah,
which is
shared it
my
in chat
frustration.
brings out. It looks like you just had a bad group.
Well, that is true. So most of our static has failed to turn up, which is never good.
Yeah.
Like half the static has just been pugs. So that's probably where most of my frustration is coming from. And I'm probably just ranting on this podcast now. But I think my point
absolutely.
still stands. That it's just far too an easy mechanic for people to be stuck on. Come on, guys, pull it together.
Yeah. Apollo says in chat, you have 10 players to manage rather than 5, so the variables of why something goes wrong goes up.
That's true. I mean, I also, like, as a raid leader, I just give me the opportunity to see everyone's debuffs so I can just do all the thinking for them. I don't mind doing that. Just give me the tools to do it.
Right.
Because it's at the moment it's very, very difficult to call out who has volatile poison on them.
If you don't have it on you yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of see this giant green skull above your Zerg, and you're like, someone's got it on them, but I can't quite tell.
Right.
And then it just drops, and you're like, oh.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, if I'd have been able to call that out 5 seconds earlier, this wouldn't have happened. And I think that's it. Like, if you have one person who's competent enough to lead the group and call out things for people to deal with, you should just allow, like, that should be enough to get you through it. Like, I should be able to carry people who, like, forget mechanics to be able to, like, call out stuff for them.
Yeah.
So rant over. So yeah. And so that's basically it for Salvation Pass. Do you guys have anything you want to bring up?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything.
Yeah.
Aaron, how are you doing over there?
I am.
Yeah,
I am
like, what's going on?
up to date. I'm up to date on the raid now. I know everything
Yeah,
about
there
it.
you
I
go.
can just walk in and solo it. No worries.
So we're not going to talk about raids anymore for a while now. I spent the last 4 episodes just talking pretty much about raids.
It's kind of hard when that's the only new content that's
Yeah.
coming into the game.
So next week we're going to try and talk about something different, switch it up a bit. So if you're not a raider and you've got no interest, thank you for bearing with us. We will be
Yes.
moving on to something that Aaron and Sandra are actually interested in next week. So yeah, so before we go, stuff that happened on GuildMag this week. So Aaron's Thrifty Threads was finally released. Do you want to give a little quick?
So it's a little Lasura, and he's got heavy armor on. He thinks he's a heavy, but he's a little Lasura.
He thinks he can play
No,
with
no,
boys.
it's a heavy armor outfit for Asuran characters because I always thought it was kind of hard to make a heavy armored Asura look halfway decent. I've always found that that's the hardest armor combo to pull off and not just look stupid. So I decided to try and make one that looks halfway decent. I think I did a pretty good job. So you guys should go to GuildMag and check out the tiny tank.
The tiny
someone,
tank.
Someone in chat earlier, I think it was Twigs, asked, "Is there now going to be a white mantle themed Thrifty Threads in the future?"
Uh-oh.
I don't know. Could be. I think a lot of people have made white mantle accidents, outfits. But I could take a crack at it. Yeah, it might happen. Who knows?
There we go. So we also, as I mentioned earlier, had our Farewell to Colin article and video. Loads of us wrote some kind of messages from just saying goodbye to Colin and kind of our memories of the game under his direction. We also did a video that brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, it was good.
One of our editors, Clayton, did it for us I think he did it in like a day. It was quite a quick turnaround.
No, he did, and he did it throughout the week. He was he was working on it really hard throughout the week, and he did a really fantastic job.
Yeah, for those of us who know the pain of video editing, he did it pretty fast.
He did it fast.
It was really fast. So yeah, make sure you go and check them out on guildmag.com. This week coming up, we've got our kind of annual edition of the latest Guild Wars 2 apps reviewed for 2016. That's coming out tomorrow on Monday, so check that out. It's quite a big list.
It is
of the best, I guess, and there's some. I think they're all quite good actually.
Yeah,
Guild Wars 2
the best and most popular.
Apps, websites, overlays, all that kind of useful stuff. Definitely worth checking out if you fancy some. I'm forgetting everything I'm trying to say this week. It's time
insights.
Yeah, insights.
Opinions, reviews.
That's the kind of thing. In terms of Twitch, so Sandra's stream didn't happen on Thursday for anyone that may have turned up. Do you want to give a little sob story apology?
Yeah, so I realized, when I went to do my testing of the stream to check my audio levels, and I encountered a completely different issue in that the computer was struggling to stream, which it hadn't been doing before. And what we pretty much kind of came up to the conclusion of is that the CPU is going, which really makes me sad. And we're in the process of replacing the potato.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get that going. If not this month, it's going to be for sure next month.
Yeah. So for now, the Thursday stream is no more.
It's
never
coming
was.
soon.
It's coming soon.
It's coming soon still. Yeah.
So, but Aaron's streams are still going.
They are. We did Harathi Hinterlands on what was that day? Wednesday. And we're gonna do probably Dredgehaunt Cliffs tomorrow on Monday. So
that's a good map.
7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. It's a fun time.
So there you go. Twitch.tv/GuildMag.
Right here. You can follow us right here.
Right
You'll
here.
be able to experience the glory that is GuildMag streaming.
And that's it. So as always, we're recruiting. So guildmag.com/join. I've said this a million times already. So if you want to write about Guild Wars 2, maybe you want to write about the new raids or the lack of story in Living World, I don't know, whatever. We are looking for
Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat. We are looking for writers to join the team, as well as editors. Although actually we've got quite a few editors now, so maybe not. Writers. If you want to be an editor, just be a writer. So we are one of the oldest Guild Wars 2 fan sites. We're coming up to our 6th birthday. In May. I think it's May.
Is it May? Okay.
I should know this, but I don't. So, yeah, come and join us. Guildmag.com/join is the address if you're interested. I guess that's it from us this week. So we will be back next week, twitch.tv/guildmag, 8 p.m. GMT/1 p.m. Pacific time. Come and join us, and we'll talk about something. I don't know what we're going to talk about. I'm kind of secretly hoping maybe someone else leaves ArenaNet and we can talk about that. Like maybe Mike O'Brien's leaving next. So,
no, oh my gosh.
So yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined us. If you Oh, what I'm trying to say. What was I trying to say? Thank you to everyone who's joined us anyway. I'm losing it today.
I think we were saying
It's okay.
goodbye.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, we were
are,
saying
B,
goodbye.
yeah. Should we just start this
So-
episode again? Like, should we just do a redo?
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, we will see you in a week's time, guys. So, thanks for joining us. Bye.
Right. Bye.
And there we go.